I want to understand people, your philosophy of life, and what really drives you, right? Because everyone is a driver. My driver is wine, by the way. Hey, Fox, welcome to A Glass of Marketing with Joe. Thank you for accepting the invite, by the way.
Pleasure to be here, Gio.
The concept is pretty simple. We're going to have a glass of wine, so I hope you got yours. And we're going to chat about marketing, life in general. And we want to mix, personal growth and professional growth. And I feel like the glass of wine is the perfect example because a glass of wine really represents, in my opinion, successful people because it's fun, because you got alcohol in there. So you need to know how to have fun in life. But at the same time, it has, a lot of learnings and a lot of discipline and a lot of study in there, right? Because inside of a glass of fine wine, you have a lot of history as well, right? So I want to mix, the personal growth and the professional growth as well.
I'll tell you one thing about wine that I always think, it's a bit like chess, right? Which is, the more you know about wine, the less you realize you understand or know about it.
That's true.
So chess, you can kind of learn how to play it, but the more you realize just how complicated it is. And wine's a bit like that. So I think there is a danger, you can get sucked into a whole world of it. And but anyway, it's I just enjoy it.
I agree with you.
Nice.
I feel sometimes it's like people with age sometimes get wiser, get better. Sometimes they don't. And it's the same with wine, right? So I feel like, it's a good example of life. And at the same time, I feel like the knowledge of wine sometimes allow you to enjoy it. But sometimes knowing too much makes it worse. Because I got a lot of friends that became sommelier and they stopped actually enjoying wine, because they were like, oh, this is too much of that. This is too much of this. And I think they stopped. So I feel like in life, you also need to balance knowing and forgetting as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. Don't overthink it. I think that's true.
By the way, what are you drinking today?
In honor of you, Gio, I'm drinking a bottle of, there you go, Pasimiento, so Sicilian red, that is. And I tell you something else about this wine.
Sicilian wine.
This wine was at my wedding. So this is a bottle left over from my wedding last year. So that's to my wife and to you, Gio. So I'm very happy to be drinking it.
Cheers. And thank you for accepting the invite. By the way, I got a few stats on the wine you're drinking. So like Pasimiento is from Sicily. So the way they do it, after they harvest the grape, they leave it under the sun to dry a little bit. So you got lower water and higher sugar quantity. The sugar quantity, of course, will transform in sweetness and alcohol. So the wine you're drinking must be very strong as well. So be careful.
It's not too bad, but it's pretty nice. Yeah, it kind of really, it's a very intense red wine. It's beautiful, actually, delicious.
Linking to the wine you're drinking, I'm actually drinking it's called Donna Giovanna, which of course is my name, but like for females in Italy, from Calabria actually. So it's in front of Sicily. So they are not actually too far. I'm from Calabria, so this is representing my region as well. It has my name, so it's representing me twice. And by the way, it's a similar concept because the wine is called Vendemmia Tardiva. So what they do is before the harvesting, they leave the grape on the plant to actually dry out. So similar to the wine you. A similar process to the one you're drinking, but they leave it on the plant for a little bit more time, essentially. So we are kind of linked.
We're kind of siblings
in some ways.
Aren't we, with wine? I quite like.
By the way, so like for people that don't know you, I have a pretty long history in marketing. So I will quickly introduce you, so then we can touch a few milestones. We will start with your professional growth, and then we move to your personal growth. Before looking at and talking to a professional, first of all, we talk to people, right? So, and companies are made of people. So I want to understand people, your philosophy of life and what really drives you, right? Because everyone is a driver. My driver is wine, by the way. you started your agency many years ago. Actually, you start 2 agencies, if I'm not wrong. Then you exit those agencies. You moved to to a brand which is called Pukka Herbs, pretty famous brand from Bristol, and then go global because it was acquired by Unilever. And then after that, you moved to your last adventure, which is Artichoke. So, and then you move from, being a founder to actually being a creative director to then being a CMO, right? So I want to better understand that. But before, looking at everything, how is it starting an agency? Like, you were young, probably, right? How does it feel? Like, to do everything by yourself? No money, probably at the beginning, maybe a few clients. Probably the rule is fake it until you make it, right? So how does it work? Like, how much do you have to fake it in order to make it?
I think the history goes a bit further back because it's probably quite relevant to talk about that. So, my very first job was a writer. I was a
Okay.
copywriter, and I I camped outside a guy's door for 3 days until he gave me a job. I really did do that, and the reason I did it was because he was an amazing guy. He was a South African he'd come across when he was young, 20 years old, 21, to I won't say who it was, but the creative agency was big, and there were maybe 150 people in the creative department, so it was a really big agency. And so he came across as a junior writer from South Africa when he was 20. And within 18 months, he was creative director. That's how good he was. And so he was super inspiring, and I wanted to work for him. And I didn't want to work for anybody else. So I figured the best thing to do was just simply wear him down. And he gave in after 3 days. It was sooner than I thought. I thought it would take me a week, but it only took me 3 days. So,
Did you try to
uh,
send him a letter first? Did you write a
yeah,
letter
yeah,
first as a writer?
yeah,
Okay.
of
But you
course,
didn't.
yeah. But then I kind of just thought I just wanted to talk to him. Anyway, so he gave me a job as a trainee, and I worked with him for a while, not long enough, because very sadly he died. He got cancer and died, and the agency imploded, and so I ended up going to work for I thought it was another creative job. It just shows that I wasn't ready to be a writer because I clearly didn't read the ad closely enough, and it actually was in media. It was a media planning job. And at the time, lots of people were being made redundant, so I decided to take it. And it turned out that philosophy, which is something I studied English and philosophy at university, that philosophy is about the best thing you can study if you're going to do media planning and buying, because your job as a planner buyer is to try and convince somebody that you should pay less for advertising. And obviously, you've got people, in broadcast or in print who are giving you 10 arguments as to why you should pay 30% more. But if you've done philosophy, you see those arguments coming about 15 miles away, and you've got 50 arguments as to why you need to pay less. And so, actually, for me, it was quite easy. I kind of found lots of arguments as to why I should pay less. And I did that for 5 years. I really enjoyed it. It was very successful. I had a big team of people, even at that very young age. I was 21, 22, and I had 18 people running an account that I took off one of the really big media agencies in the UK. And I really, really enjoyed it. But then I found that I missed what I was planning to do all along, which was creative. And so rather than go in to a bigger agency, which I was asked to do and set up media divisions, I decided that I would take a pay cut. I was offered double the pay, and I actually took a 50% pay cut to go
To
back
decide
into a
to do it
creative
yourself,
agency.
right?
Yeah, to follow my kind of dream. I don't know if dream is the right word, but I felt very strongly that at that stage, I could end up just being a kind of one trick pony, that I would just end up only ever doing media, and I thought it would be a mistake to do that. So I needed to get a wider experience, and that's what I did. I did that for a very short time, and I always knew I wanted to start an agency, and it just so happened I kind of ended up becoming really good friends with somebody else who also wanted to do that, and We did it within 6 months.
I feel like it's a great learning year. Like you actually started working for someone else. You understood,
Mm,
what really worked and what doesn't work before then starting your own. So I think the
yeah.
first thing here is like actually stealing, right? Actually understanding what the others are doing and then improve it, right? Some people call it the EasyJet strategy, right? You look at what Ryanair does and you just improve it, right?
Well, I think I always remember there was a guy who worked for me as a creative. He was really good, called Mark, who used to say that there are only 7 original ideas in the world. So he's probably right. I mean, and so I think inevitably everybody steals all the time.
How
Okay,
many of
so
them
it's
are yours?
well, probably none actually. In fact, definitely none. But I think that hopefully what I do is kind of do it in an intelligent way and try and understand things. So this period of my career was all about learning. It was all about understanding, and it was about saying, okay, well, these different aspects of how agencies operate, a media agency, how that operates, a really big creative agency, how that operates, going into a smaller agency and being an account handler, even though I was a very bad one, and looking at the business angle of an agency and how that operated. And then
So you started your first business with a friend,
I
which I
did.
think is also a second takeaway here, right? Because at the end of the day, you usually say find people you wanna to work with that are the same people you wanna have a drink together, right? How do you find the
Mm.
first clients?
Well, you kind of start with that. I mean, I don't think you start a company unless you've got a really clear view about what you're going to do, and also some confidence that the thing that you're going to do is going to work. Having said that, I then did it again later on, and we didn't know that, but we felt so strongly about the proposition that we really believed it would work. But I'll come on to that a bit later. So we did have clients. Well, they weren't clients, but we felt we'd had conversations with them where they said, if you start something, we will test the waters. We won't give you all our business, but we'll give you something, and then you can prove whether or not you're good enough. And I was 27, so I was really super young. But it turned out that we could do it. We learned a great deal. I mean, we had some really, really big moments. There was a moment where, and it wasn't our fault, we were sued for 65 million 6 months in. And that was because we ran a promotion in a national newspaper that was against the law. We didn't realize it was, and it was a completely innocent mistake. But it turned into something which was really quite traumatic. We didn't sleep for 3 days, literally didn't sleep at all.
I
I
mean,
think
did
I
it go
think
viral at the end or not?
no,
Because,
it was before those days really, but it was
okay.
one of those things where we initially we were. It's the only time in my life I've thought about getting on a plane to South America one way. I mean, I really did. I thought that was it. Um, but actually, we had some very good advice, and it cost us a lot of money, but not the company. And at the time, we were the fastest growing agency in the UK. We were 2 years running, actually, the fastest growing. So we were able to weather that, and also it taught us a huge amount, and we really improved the way we were run as a consequence, which actually in the end. Was a huge benefit. It was a very painful one, and many companies, I think, going through that would actually just fail. They would go bust. So we
So,
we managed to weather it.
starting an agency with one of your best friends, getting the few
Mm.
clients, I think probably getting the new clients at the beginning is the hardest part, right? Because the first few
Yeah,
is the hardest. Once you establish yourself as an agency, right? Then of course at some point you decide to sell it. Why you decide to
yeah.
sell it?
Well, I think if you're running a business like that, certainly for the first 5 or 6 years, probably, I guess I was working a minimum of 12 hours a day, every single day of the week. I mean, literally every single day. And by that stage, by the time I sold it, which was 10 years later, I had 4 children. Three of them had been under the age of 5. So it was very, very tough on my home life. And so, ultimately it was down to that. It was a personal decision, which was really, had a lot of pressure on that. And I decided to, um, I could either work less, which I did try and do, or I could exit. And in the end, I decided that the agency had got to a size where really all I was doing was talking about car parking, and I wanted to get back to doing the stuff that I really loved. And that's what happens when you run a business that's successful. You get bigger. You have all sorts of issues around the running of that business rather than the work that you started out wanting to do. And whilst that's very interesting, if it's your own business, you often want to get back to the nitty gritty of the stuff that excites you, which for me is always
Yeah, no,
about
no, it's a great
marketing,
point. I think it's a great point. I feel like when you get bigger, sometimes you lose control, right? So it's the
Yeah.
same. It's the same with agency, but it's the same with brands, right? Because at the beginning you are indie. It's the same for musicians as well, right? At the beginning you are an indie. You actually doing it yourself. You're doing it for yourself. But then the bigger you get, and probably at some point you do it more for the others than for yourself, because of course you got people working for you, people working with you, and you feel the responsibility as well. So I feel like, even when you are in a corporate and you have a team of 10 people, I feel like you already feel the responsibility of your decision can affect those other people. So definitely making a decision at some point, which is also like quality of life, work-life balance. If you have to work 12 hours a day, 15 hours a day, only because you feel the weight of it, but you're not enjoying it anymore, I think it's a smart decision to also understand when it's time to stop, when it's time to, go to the next step. So I think it's a great point. So you move from your agency to actually Pukka Herbs, which was a very indie and fast-growing tea brand in England. I mean, England is not like Italy. A lot of people drink tea, so it's a big industry. There are big brands that are already dominating the market. How is it moving from working for yourself to actually going back to work for the others?
Yeah, I mean, that was when, so I'd left the agency, sold that, and then I started a consultancy. That consultancy was an attempt to get back to the pure stuff that we were doing that I really enjoyed doing and keeping it small. And you're right. In that consultancy, one of those clients was Pukka, and I suppose that what I found, it was quite interesting. I kind of fell in love. I fell in love with the the sort of mission and purpose of a company that was all about that. The story behind Pukka is really interesting. The In 2001, Seb Pole and Tim Westwell owned Pukka. Seb was a herbalist, been traveling around India and studied herbal medicine for many years, and then ended up in a caravan learning how to grow organic herbs, actually. And Tim had been, more of a kind of sales guy, really traveling around Europe, and had a really bad back problem, and found the answer was not a lifetime on drugs, which is what he was prescribed by a doctor, but actually herbs. That's the thing that really helped him. And he became a kind of evangelist. And both separately, they were like that. He put an advert in a local newspaper, and the only person that responded was Seb. And together they knocked up tea in Seb's kitchen. That's how it all started. So there was something really beautiful and lovely about that. And what they really set out to do were two things. The first was create the best quality, uh, and as a result, help people to understand the benefits of herbs by doing that. And the second was do it in a way that was beneficial for everybody, right? So not just the people drinking the tea, but the people growing the herbs and everything else. And we used to call it conservation through commerce. So how can you create a virtuous circle of what you're doing so that everybody connected with it, whether that's the people that work for the business or the people that are supplying you or the people that are actually consuming your product, that everybody wins. And that is what Pukka absolutely did. And I just thought that if ever there was a model that modern capitalism should try and follow, it must be that.
Teams are like families, right? And probably it's sometimes it's better than families because you can decide who you work with in some cases where you don't really choose your brother and sister, right? What do you look for when you hiring like new people? and building a team?
Well, I mean, I was talking to somebody today because obviously I'm now another brand again, a bit like Pukka was when I first started. You know, it's quite small, but what it does is just absolutely incredible. And so I've got to do it again. You know, I've got to build a team, and I think every time I look, what I look for, you know, I mean, of course, people's skills and their CVs are important, and of course I review those and look at those, but I'm not really looking at that so much. I feel like that's a hygiene thing. What I'm really looking for is attitude. There's a really good I can't remember who, I have no idea who said it, but it's culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I think that that is true. That in order for you to be able to create something really powerful in a team, you have to understand the dynamic of the people who work in it. And ultimately, what you really want, beyond their skill, is their desire and willingness to work with and for each other and challenge each other. You know, so that isn't always just benign. It can be actually quite there can be quite a lot of tension. But I think that what you really want is for everybody to be able to rally around the direction that you're going in. And that's what leadership is about. Leadership is about uh, being able to articulate the direction that you're going in, inspire people to believe that that is the right direction, and support them in the journey to get there. That is the gig. Uh, and also in hiring people, you don't always get it right. You don't always get the dynamic of the team. Things change and people evolve, and you know
Like in my
ultimately you have
case.
to make. Well, it just no, you were great, Gio. You know, I think what you're trying to do in a team is just identify the cultural dimension of that person, the sort of emotional intelligence that they have, and therefore their ability to play the role, depending on what you're asking them to do, to play the role as part of that team. And then often those parts don't always completely connect, and so your job is to try and just help them, just maneuver them in order for you to get the very best out of them, and for them to feel like that about themselves. That's the other super important thing, is that everybody is, you know, they're people, you know, so we live lives, right? And we want to enjoy what we
Exactly.
do, and we want to feel like we're developing and progressing and all of that good stuff. So yeah.
I think the key here is actually, you know, the last thing you said, which is like we are people, right? And you know, corporates are made of people, teams are made of people, and everyone has their, you know, dreams, everyone has their passions, and of course I feel like everyone has their own talent, and I think the key is actually exploiting the talent, right? Because of course you're naturally good at something, but then of course on the other side you need to improve on what you are not good at, so you can actually be a better human as well as a better professional. But in order to learn, in order to understand what you are good at, and in order to understand what you are not good at, you need to actually go and look inside yourself. So having the emotional intelligence you were talking about, and I feel corporates should invest more in helping people working on their emotion. Corporates usually say, you know, the perks, the benefits are free bananas, free breakfast, where I feel like they should give you like a free therapist. You know what I mean? Like to help you being a happier human being, a better person. Because I feel like happier people build happier teams, build better companies. Because a company is like a society at the end of the day, right? You get politics, you get people that are good but not good in selling themselves. You got people that are very good in selling themselves, but they have not much really to say anyway. And of course, I wanna look at it in a romantic way, that I feel like, you know, the good always wins, right? Like, you know, the good people, the good energy, the positive attitude always wins. And usually when I work with people, I usually look at people first, right? And then I analyze what they're good at, because they can always improve. People can improve. But like, you move from being a creative director to actually, you know, being a CMO. So the thing that I always wanted to ask you is, what does a CMO actually do? Because, you know, people like, okay, it means like chief marketing officer, right? Which means like you are the big boss of marketing. But do you still do marketing? Are you still creative, or you just manage people?
Well, I guess that depends on who you are. And also probably which job you're doing and which company you're in. I mean, from my perspective, I find it hard to separate the two. So, of course I do that because I love it. It's kind of part of my DNA, and so I feel like it's super important. And one of my jobs, at least, is to try and help people to understand probably the most abused term in the whole of marketing, which is brand, and what a brand actually is, and how it behaves.
I
And
was gonna ask you, what's the difference between a
well,
brand and religion, right?
sometimes I think a difference is right. Okay, if let's go get
So is the
contentious
CMO
here,
God
because right,
then?
opinion on religion? No, God, no. Religion is in my view, is an opportunity for people to abdicate responsibility because they put their faith in something on answers that they cannot have, right? So in the case where they can't answer something, they simply go, well, that's my God, or whatever, to be able to answer it. In the case of a brand, it's nothing to do with that, but I think there is a system of belief. So it's a bit like, you go back to, for anybody who studies philosophy, you go back to Wittgenstein, right? And he was obsessed with language, and he used to talk about, you know, one of philosophy's great things was, do I know that I'm here, right? We're having this conversation now, okay? If I was a philosopher, I would say, well, how do you know, Gio, that you're sat in that studio talking to that microphone? How do you know that?
I'm not. It's
And
actually AI. It's not me.
yeah,
It's
right.
actually
Well,
it's my avatar.
indeed,
Yeah.
yeah, right. And frankly, with deepfake, who could say these days?
Something interesting about languages is, of course, I'm originally Italian.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm learning how to speak English. I moved to England 7 years ago now,
yeah, it's
and
much better than
I
my
was
Italian.
speaking to, and I was speaking with like a few different people that like me, they've been living abroad. And what I've noticed is that actually language shapes your brain, shapes the way you're thinking, right? Because of course we express ourselves through words, right? And the way of saying things really change the way you are. So of course, like the better you get with the language, then of course you can kind of adapt it to your personality, right? But in Italian, I was always the one with, I always had the joke in the elevator. You know what I mean? I was always the one with the quick joke, right?
Mm.
The moment I moved to England, I remember the first 2, 3 years, I was so silent in elevators because I remember once I tried to make a joke. And the person say, sorry, can you say again? And the moment someone asks you to say again, it's not funny anymore, right? So I had to actually, that made me grow a lot because first of all, I learned how to shut up because, sometimes it's pretty good. And you learn how to listen, and listening is key. But at the same time, I also kind of shaped my personality, right? In a way that two languages make you probably think sometimes who you really are, right? Because then going into a corporate and working in a different language, but then making sure that people really know who Joe is, and then getting these people together with other people from my, I don't know, hometown, and actually knowing the same Joe, different shades of the same person. I think that's the key, right? So of course languages shape your mind, but also it's like linked to getting out of your comfort zone, because as you said, sometimes you don't know who you really are, because like when you live in a society, like let's say in your hometown, you are Fox, but in London, and when you get in the Unilever office, you are another Fox. And in your current company, you are a different Fox. Your family, inside your house, you are a different Fox. Same Fox, different shades of Fox, right? So I think it's pretty interesting because then you really understand who you really are, right? You are not different than this for five Fox. It's the same Fox.
I think
How
that's
many
one of the
times
things
did I
that
say Fox, by the way?
quite a few, yeah, quite a few. I only recently, by the way, found out that the Spanish for fox is Zorro, which I was particularly happy
Okay.
about.
Moving to another topic, I think it's pretty interesting to see how AI is shaping the world, right? Because of course, we
Mm,
have user-generated content. on one
Yeah.
side. So people actually being the the
Yeah.
creators. So I think it's
Yeah.
already shaping the society, because you see like creative directors like you did 20-30 years ago and today,
Yeah.
right, where you're actually leveraging on users. So your final user is becoming your brand ambassador, is becoming,
Yeah.
so it's like a religion, right? So like it's becoming your brand ambassador, is actually creating content for you. So of course,
Mm.
probably uh, art directors, creative directors can work less because they got other people working for them if they give them the right brief. But
Yeah.
I think the point is companies are generating helping generate a lot of user generated content, and then if you share it in the right way, it can go viral, and probably TikTok is the best representation of that, right? But I've
Mm.
seen a study from performancemarketingworld.com, and they actually show how people are scared about fake user generated content, because of course AI now is helping create a lot of quantity of fake news as well, right? So there are fake reviews, fake social content, there is a lot of fake images and fake videos, right? So in your opinion, right, who should be responsible for resolving this fake user generated content? Should be the platforms, should be the brands, or should be like the government?
Oh, I don't think you can police that, Joe. I don't. I think that the genie's out of the bottle, right? I think that once that particular Pandora's box is open, that's it. The the final way that that resolves itself, I strongly suspect, is that the one currency that will remain will be original ideas and people's understanding and ability to relate to that. And the thing to guard against at all costs is commoditization and the degree to which formulaic, the way of applying, for example, marketing, and goodness knows over the last couple of years, I've come face to face with some of that thinking. Um, whilst there is some merit in understanding and maybe even applying Byron Sharp's laws of growth, as a substitute for what would ultimately succeed for a brand over a long period. I don't think it is that. I think it is, maybe that's possibly why I've gone to, one of the highest end categories there is. This is, and I think that I wrote something yesterday, funnily enough, which is possibly a bit related to this, which is that, in the modern world, we are, there's a kind of crisis of creativity, right? Because automation basically breeds contempt for that, which is pretty much what you've just described. And yet, there is also an ever increasing aspiration for craft, for the highest end of craft. If you think about watchmaking or fashion or automotive or buildings or so many different categories, it is the individuality of those things, the things that that signify that this is not AI, that it cannot be AI, that really marks it out. And of course, all the rest of that stuff, all the rest of that content, it will write itself in the same way that the planet doesn't care about global warming. The planet will deal with it, right? I mean, it's the human race that's going to have an issue. It's not the planet. The planet will be fine. It's just us that isn't going to be
You
fine.
think the
So
system is going to regulate by itself anyway, right?
no, I think it'll just basically total the platform. So, if people are ending up not being able to differentiate on TikTok between something that is real and something that is not, they just won't go on TikTok, right? They just go, I tell you what, I'm going to go to. So somebody will come up with a platform which is called Real Talk
I
or
think
something like
being
that,
able
right?
to differentiate is the key, right? Critical thinking is the key. I feel like in an information technology society where, of course, today we have so many informations, right? So much
Mm,
content. So I think the new skill, right, is not actually only being creative, because I feel like being creative will always be important, because, of course, AI is actually producing better content for everyone. I think that's the
yeah,
standard that's higher today, right? Because
yeah,
like everyone can write an article today.
it's super
Everyone can
useful. Yeah.
everyone can write smart emails and etc. But
Mm.
when everyone can do it, then of course, you always need the extra step. You always need,
Yeah.
the creativity to do that. But I feel like
Yeah.
critical thinking will be key, because understanding what's real and what's not real, I think it's part of educating the new generation. So,
But that goes
um,
back to understanding what creativity is, Joe, right? Okay, so creativity is not pictures. Okay, it is, but it's not. Creativity is thought. Okay, it is about, can you think creatively? And if you can think
it's
creatively,
philosophy,
you can master.
Fox.
Yeah,
It's philosophy.
that
It's actually
it
questioning yourself. Yeah.
it is. Yeah, I mean, it used to be. If you went to university 200 years ago, you would study mathematics or something like that. You would study that for a long period of time on medicine. The highest possible thing that you could study, the very last thing that you would study is philosophy. That would be the ultimate thing, because it is about questioning you, the universe, everything that goes in it, and trying to really pierce the assumed beliefs of what is going on. And so I think that, you know, yeah, of course, AI is brilliant. I think the idea of it producing content's terrific. Why not? I think that's really cool, but it doesn't replace creative thinking, so long as the creative thinking is good enough and sharp enough. And so ultimately, people will be judged, and brands will be judged, and individuals will be judged on their ability to be able to do that better.
Moving to another insight that I found pretty interesting while, going through a few articles from
Mm.
performancemarketingworld.com, is that actually out of home advertising, is actually becoming more important. Because if you think about it, right, in the past you couldn't measure marketing. Like, you place a billboard, and you didn't know how many people bought the products that they've seen in that billboard, right? And I think the power of digital marketing, that is actually called performance marketing, is that you can actually measure. So you know how many products people bought after they seen your Instagram ads, right? And now out of home is actually bringing the two hybrids, because it's actually offline, but at the same time is able to track how many people have seen it, and is able to kind of interact with you as well. The new generation of traditional marketing, it can go viral, because if you have murals, if you have out of home, if you have cool billboards, people can take a picture and share it online. So what's your take on the new generation of out of home
Yeah, well, I
advertising?
think it's great. I mean, as somebody, my agency was called TDA, which stood for the direct agency, and that is, the bones of that is digital, is data, So my whole career has been involved with that, and of course I spent 5 years in media. So attribution, looking at how the performance of marketing relates back to the money that you spend and the creative ideas that you put forward is absolutely essential. Otherwise, why spend the money? And I think what is really interesting in the sort of new environment is two things. One is that attribution is much better, like you just described, and that's really, really exciting. And the second is, because of that, maybe that people are being more expansive and more innovative with the format. So they're looking at how to make that work, because they recognize that it's attribution, as opposed to it just being, well, we'll waste a ton of money on this cinema campaign or on this outdoor campaign or whatever it might be. Whereas now, actually, they're kind of thinking, do you know what? That looks really good. That target market is sat there. They're not looking at anything else. We can actually get them to interact. That's, we can see how that's working. And I think that opens up huge opportunities for people to get very, very creative. And I think that's got to be good for kind of everyone. And as far as, there's nothing more depressing. I don't know about you, but for me, there was nothing more depressing than basically sat down in front of the TV and watching a load of really, really rubbish advertising. I mean, it is just absolutely gutting. As somebody who has spent their whole career doing this, I want to see good advertising. I want to see the best. I believe that we should live in an environment which crafts this stuff, which is, you know, proud of the work that it creates, not just churning out a ton of cruise ads or whatever it might be. I don't want to knock them, but I think that, you know, I think we're kind of I am never ever, I've never been happy with a single thing I've ever done. I mean, I really genuinely haven't, even though I think some of the stuff that we've executed is actually, is performed really well and frankly built great brands, but I still believe
Why did you choose marketing?
I always wanted to be a writer. I always wanted
Okay.
to try and help people. I liked articulating things. I like talking. God knows everybody who's ever worked with me will know that. I think that
Yeah.
marketing is much more about how do you persuade somebody, or how do you articulate the thing that you want to sell in the best possible way. That's the thing that's always really lit me up.
And to be honest, marketing is everywhere, right? Because when you're looking for a wife, when you're looking for a girlfriend, right? When you're looking for new friends, when you want to impress someone, it's already marketing, right? Because I usually give this example, right? If I'm looking for a new girlfriend, first of all, I take care of my communication, right? So I go to the gym, I go to the barber shop, I get nice clothes, and of course, I need to adapt my clothing to the placement, right? So if I'm going to a 5-star hotel, or like or like having a beer in the middle of the street, probably sitting down, you need to have two different type of clothing as well. Otherwise, you're gonna be perceived as not like being part of that environment, right? But like I feel like being uh marketers is like living everyday life, because we don't know that, but we sell our ideas, we sell ourselves every day anywhere, right? I feel like marketing is a psychologist that is working for uh, an economist, right? And you're telling other brand stories, right, in a creative way. Um, is other people's story always interesting, or sometimes you work hard to make
I
it
think you've got
interesting?
to try it if you can. If you're really super lucky, you work for brands which are interesting. I mean, I certainly in the last my choosing this role is it was all about that. It was all about which one lights me up and makes me think, do you know what? This is really super cool, and I could really tell this story. I think that marketing is just about psychology. Back to your point, if you try too hard, we all know this, right? Yeah, you put all the things together to put you in that position. But my goodness me, if you then go out there and try and sell yourself, you've had it. No one is going to want to kiss you, Joe. That's it, right? Uh, Whereas if you just do the right things and then you kind of, you have to play it slightly cool, but believe that actually the clothes that you're wearing, the fact that you're ripped from the gym, you name it, right? That you kind of say the odd really funny thing the girl's gonna, the girl's gonna come, or the boy, or whatever. It's, I think, love's gonna happen, right? So I'm a great believer in that. That you in life you can't necessarily force things. Okay, you just can't. People want to. They want to somehow dictate, but actually, to quote Bruce Lee, you have to be like water, right? You have to just understand the organic nature of life and just let things happen.
Fox, don't you think it's better to be
Yeah,
like
probably
wine
like one
instead?
even better, right? I mean, I think you do have to do that. You have to kind of relax into that and be confident, which is, I think, also back to the point about corporates, is that there's not enough people who've got that confidence and being relaxed about it. They're too want to sell things, want to sell themselves, want to sell this deck or this or whatever. Don't do that.
Is being authentic, right? I feel like sometimes
Yeah.
when brands are authentic with people, because I feel like for me there is no big difference between brands and people, right? If you think about it,
Mm.
brands have been trying to be people forever, right? Because
Yeah.
they wanna have a personality, and indeed this is why today we have personal branding, because people were like, why not being brands? And now brands are like, why we don't have people endorsing? It's like influencer marketing. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
I feel like the biggest marketing channel still today is word of mouth, because you trust what other people that you already trust are advising you, right? So I think word of mouth has always been the biggest place, the biggest channels. At the same time, we're just changing the way of giving the word of mouth. So in the past was offline, today is online, and you have it through reviews, you have it through influencers, because I feel at the end of the day, people trust influencers because they've been following them every day for years. So at some point, you feel like you know them, even if you never met them in person, right? So I think the key is being authentic, right? When a brand is
It
authentic,
is.
even if it's not great, like you selling like I don't know, like wine, and you like, look, I don't produce the best wine, but I help the environment. I help the community. Actually, shit. Do you want to drink shitty wine? Yeah, why not? You know what I mean? So I
Mm.
think like being authentic, and it goes back to being nice people and being, real. I think sometimes you can tell, like when you enter a meeting room or when you enter like any room, right? You actually
Mm.
can tell who is being authentic and who is not, because people that are not
Yeah.
authentic, you can tell they are scared, they are afraid.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, ultimately, there's always a really difficult tension or sort of thin line between arrogance and conviction. Okay, I think sometimes a lot of people think I'm arrogant. Maybe they're right, actually. Hopefully, I'm not. Hopefully, I have just have great conviction in the kind of things that I do, and with that goes a real desire to be humble. You know, there's so much stuff I do not know. I don't, I know nothing. Back to wine. I know nothing, right? and and so the joy of it is to learn. The joy of it is to be uh, able and confident enough to open your soul and say, do you know what? I don't know anything, but I'm just going to enjoy being here and trying to be as good as I possibly can be, and be. And my conviction is that somehow we can work our way through it. We can put a team together and we can do something that is kind of great. And then the trick, of course, from a career point of view, is to do something and work somewhere with a team of people that you believe in and that you think you can make a difference to. And, I feel for most people in marketing that if they can do that and they can work with teams like that and with brands like that, then actually they kind of look back and say, do you know what, that was really great.
I feel the challenge is that you can always you work with, and you can only choose how you react, right? So I
You
feel
can always
like,
choose that, Joe. No, that's not true. The only thing you can't choose is your family. Yeah, you made that point earlier on. You can't choose that. You're born with that. But you can choose who you work with. You can. Or you can choose the way that you work with them. You can make
okay,
those choices. Of course you can. So, I mean, I'm not saying that that's always easy. It's not. Sometimes you have to make decisions which say, I could go and earn twice the amount of money, but I'm going to go and earn half the amount of money. And those decisions are hard. But if you understand the context of it and then you sort of say, right, okay, well, actually, what I'm trying to do is this. Just maybe that's the right thing to do. And it's about making really, hopefully, informed choices and things that really matter, and then being authentic about it. You get lots of stick along the way for it, for sure. And I've had plenty. And much of it, if not all of it, is completely justified, I think.
so there is a
But
cost
hopefully, I've
of
also been
happiness. There is
authentic.
always a
Yeah,
cost, right?
there is. Yeah,
So
but
what's the
I
cost of
think, yeah.
happiness? What's your like? What's your definition? What's your definition of success? Like,
Ah, personal fulfillment, isn't it? And of course, love. I think ultimately love, not for yourself, but for other people. Okay, so for me, the definition that I have of success is all the people, in my career, is all the people that I've worked with and that I've learned from and that I've enjoyed being with and that I've shared a glass of wine with, right? That is my definition of success. Not the work. The work I hope is great, but that's not the thing that defines it. In my personal life, my children, my partners, I guess, my family, although I'm born with those, so there's not much I can do about it, but I chose my partners and I chose to have children and they're amazing, my kids, so you know, that's how I define it. And a good glass of Sicilian red.
as you said, I feel like the real meaning is actually sharing, right? It's like a great glass of wine without anyone to share it with. It's useless, right? So I feel like, this is a journey. We don't know where we're coming from. We don't
Mm,
know where we're going. We can just kind of sometimes adjust the direction, but even when we
mm,
adjust the direction, we don't know what's there, right? So we always betting, right? Once a person told me, which was
it's
actually a girl that left me actually, and she told me, every decision is a bet, right? So you never know if it's right or wrong, but you have to take it, right? And sometimes it's just having
mm,
the guts to take decisions, right? So as you
mm,
said, sometimes people want to keep their
make
job even
choices.
if they are
Mm,
not happy, but they're making good money, or on the other side, people are like, look, I would rather lose some money and be happy with what I'm doing, right? But then the point is, it's not about money, it's what you do with the money, right? I feel like money is a tool, and you decide what makes you happy. Some people want to spend it on expensive watches, some people on expensive wine, some other people just want to collect it, because I've met some people, they just enjoying collecting money as well, right? And they want to just see the bank account go up. So
I doubt if it makes you
I,
happy, Joe. I think that, the lack of money can make you very unhappy.
yeah,
Okay? The accumulation of money is unlikely to make you happy. I think that's how I define it. It gives you choices, and that's great. So long as those choices are things that basically can make you happy, and that's what you've got to remember. Okay, so it's not the accumulation of the money itself that does that. It's the choices you make with it. A bit like, a bottle of wine. You drink a bottle of wine on your own, it's probably not that great. I mean, a bottle has got what, 6 glasses in it? So, pick 5 people. It'd probably be the best bottle of wine you drunk. Doesn't matter what it is. Just probably be
I
great.
totally agree with you. By the way, that was great. Sharing this glass of wine with you was great. I would like to thank you, Fox. I think, it's been a
You're
great
welcome.
conversation.
I think when I reflect, I mean, and I am not finished, not by any way. But I always feel an enormous sense of gratitude. I think, for the people that I've been so incredibly lucky to work with, from people like Tim and Seb at Pukka to all my teams, throughout the years, and the people that I'm working with now, I just feel incredibly lucky. My family and my kids, I life is an amazing thing, right? You wake up every day and you just go, that is so cool. It really is. And every day you want to try and make the most of that because it's great. And that's what you've
Thank
got
you
to
for
remember.
that.
I'm just like super positive about the whole thing. It's brilliant.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cheers to that. Cheers
Yeah,
to life then.
absolutely. All right.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Fox.
Nice.